Now, folks, I want to just end tonight with really sharing with you the excitement that I have come to feel about this passage for all of us as men and women. And I was sharing with our elders tonight, I approached 1 Corinthians 11 this time with a fair amount of anxiety. And I have been fearful that we would lose some people as a direct result of my preaching through this passage carefully. And we may. And if you choose to do that, I will grieve over that, but we will be friends. Okay, I won't let you, and I know you wouldn't want to, burn the bridges. We're going to be friends. And I'm sure other folks here would feel that way too. But I did have some anxiety about it. And I have, every week, I've had to really beseech the Lord to help me stand up and be confident and just preach it. But in the last couple of weeks, I've come to have real enthusiasm. And ironically, what has done it is what is happening in our culture. What the Supreme Court is considering right now, and that they supposedly will give their ruling on next month. The vote that I called to your attention this morning was taken in Ireland yesterday, where Ireland is the first nation in the history of the world. We're at this point now in world history. First nation in the history of the world where the majority of the voters, this wasn't legislated by a court, this was put to popular vote, where the majority of the population went against nature and voted to recognize same-sex unions as legitimate marriage. It is stunning. You can't believe it's happening in your lifetime. They literally can't even get nature right any longer. All right. Folks, it is exciting. I told our elders tonight, this series at this point is, in my mind, so timely for our church. It is given to us by the head of the church, Jesus Christ, to go on public display to show without any ambiguity, both by the length or shortness of our hair as men and women in this church, as well as by the assumption of temporary visible head coverings or the absence of them as men and women in this church. It has been given to us by Jesus Christ to display men and women in their right position before God and one another. And the way to do it is so simple. It's just so easy. Now, ladies, you're going to have trouble believing me about this, okay? But this is really true. I almost feel blasphemous saying it. You'll understand. I actually wish it was turned around and that we men got to wear something on our heads. And I really think at this point in our culture, I could be thrilled about getting up on a Lord's Day morning and having something so simple that I could display so conspicuously to make a huge point that the whole culture needs to see and understand. But I can't. I can't do it. I've got to come and preach to you bareheaded. But if I get an opportunity, when I'm asked in the future, and we do get asked sometimes by folks who really want to understand what we're doing, I'm not going to talk about our ladies. I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about the men. I'm going to say, let me tell you why I don't wear something on my head. I'll bet when I start talking about it, whoever I'm talking to is going to get this little amused look on his face and kind of be a little condescending and kind of joke me a little bit. It's okay. I'm going to hang right in there with him. But I'm going to tell him, and I'm going to say to him, a lot of these dear brothers are friends of mine in the ministry. I'm going to say, and I'll bet you don't wear anything on your head either, do you? There's got to be a reason for that. And my point just is this, folks. We don't need to begrudge this. Men, we don't need to begrudge this. And ladies, we don't need to. We need to embrace it for Christ's sake. This is for His sake. And I'll bet you can't think of a time in the history of the world when this distinction and contentedness with this distinction and just full, delightful acceptance of it was more needed to be communicated. So I have come to accept this as the timing of the Lord for our church, to give this attention to it. And folks, I am confident of this. It's like all of God's truth that gets overlooked or misunderstood, and sometimes, in some cases, for centuries, just kind of gets set aside. This teaching has pretty much been set aside in about the last 100 years. Before that, it was almost universally understood and practiced. We'll talk about that next week. But I am confident, if the Lord tarries, that the true understanding of this passage will be recovered. Why? Because it's God's truth. And because we're living in a day now when it, like all the passages dealing with the relationships of men and women in the church and in the home, we are being forced by the culture to find out what they really say and to decide whether we are going to stand for it or not. The culture is forcing us into that corner. And I've just decided I'm going to be happy about it. Love it, embrace it, do my best to honor the Lord with it.